Welcome to part 5, and maybe one of the most important parts of this series. Today we're going to learn about simple equations. In this video, we will be using all of the other things we learned from the previous videos. And today we're going to be doing simple equations, but later on we're going to get into more complex equations. Okay, let's get started. The aim in solving an equation is to isolate the unknown. Okay, that's all we're doing. The set of values that satisfy an equation is called the solution set, and these values are referred to as the roots of the equation. Those are pretty much the only things you need to know. Okay, before we get started, I just want to make sure that we know the difference between an equation and an expression. So 3x plus 2 would be an expression by itself. But if we use equality sign, it would be an expression by itself. But if we use the equality sign and make it equal to 6x, then this whole thing would be an equation. So this equation is basically setting two expressions equal to each other, right? Here, the question is asking, given that x minus 3 equals to 9, what is x? Well, it's simple. All we have to do is isolate the unknown. So what does that mean? It means that now we have an equal sign here, and there's a right side of the equal sign and then left side. So we're just going to leave basically x alone on one side. It doesn't matter which side, but we're just going to leave the x alone on one side, and the other side will have other numbers, right? So all we want is to get x equals something something. So how do we do that? In this question, to do that, we need to get rid of the -3 here, right? To leave the x alone. So if we send -3 here on this side, on to the right side, we would have x alone. How do we do that? We're just going to do x, and we're just going to send it as +3. If you're sending a number to the other side, you're just going to change the sign of the number. If it's negative, it's going to be positive. If it's positive, it's going to be negative. And then it will be x equals 9 plus 3, which means that x equals 12, right? What we basically did is, you can also think of it as adding 3 to both sides. We have x minus 3 equals 9, and if we add 3 to both sides, it wouldn't change the value of x. Why? Because they're both equal and we're adding the same amount to both sides. So imagine a scale like this. Sorry for my ugly drawing, but you have 2 kilos here and then 2 kilos here. And they would be equal, right? Both sides would be equal. And if you add 1 kilo here and then 1 kilo here, it would still be equal, right? The equality wouldn't change because both sides are 3, right? So that's basically what we did. So we found that x equals to 12, which means that the root of this equation is 12. Therefore, the solution set, we can just write it as SS, is so if the question is asking you to find what the roots are, you write it like this. And if it's asking what the solution set is, you write it like this. Now it's asking find the solution set for the equation b plus 5 equals 22. We want to isolate the unknown, so we're just going to write b here, and we're going to send 5 to the other side, which means that it's going to turn into a -5, right? Because it's +5 here. It's going to be 22 minus 5. B equals 17. Okay, in this question, it's asking for the root. Oh, here we have a negative in front of y. Let's first actually isolate the unknown. So we have a +9. We're gonna send to the other side as a negative. So we're gonna be left with -y equals 20 minus 9. Y equals 11. But we don't want negative y. We want positive y, right? So we have to somehow turn into a positive y. But remember that this negative is a -1, right? -1. It's a multiplication. So there's an invisible 1 there. And if you remember it from the previous videos, you can simplify it by dividing by that number. We do that for the both sides to not mess with the equality, to keep the equality. If we divide it, we're going to get rid of those. And we're going to be left with y equals 11 divided by -1 is -11. If you remember from the second video. And so the root is -11. By the way, I realized that I didn't answer this question correctly because it's asking the solution set. When it's asking for the solution set, we're going to write it like this. Solution set equals 2, curly brackets, 17. In this question, we're looking for x. Well, we have a multiplication here, and if we want to leave x alone, we can just simplify it and divide both sides by -8. Why -8? Because we want to get rid of this -8, right? So if we do that, these will cancel each other out. We're going to have x left on the left side, and then 40 divided by 8 would be 5, and we have a negative sign, so positive divided by negative is a negative. -5 is our answer. Now let's do this question. Again, the same thing. We want to leave the unknown alone, which in this case is z. We're going to divide both sides by 3. Let's do that. This will simplify, and it's going to leave us with z here on the left, which will equal -21 divided by 3 is -7. And that's our answer. Okay, now we're getting into a little bit more complicated. Not so much, still these are relatively simple compared to what we're going to learn later. But to get to those complicated stuff, of course, you need to first learn these easy equations. In this question, if you just go ahead and divide both sides by 2, that would make everything more complicated. We don't do that. So to solve this, we will first send -5 to the other side, which will turn into a +5. It's going to leave us with -2x equals 12 plus 5, which will give us 17 here. And now we can leave the x alone by dividing with -2 both sides. This will cancel, and it will leave us with x equals to 17 or -17 over 2. And that's our answer. Okay, here we have 3 times -z plus 2 equals to 18. There are two main ways you could do this, which is to do the distributive property and distribute 3 to this parentheses and then solve it, or you could simply divide both sides by 3 to get rid of 3. But let's do both of them to see that they're actually they both work. Let's use the distributive property first. Distribute 3. 3 times -z would give us -3z. And then 3 times 2 would give us 6 equals to 18. Now we can send +6 to the other side, which will become -6. It will leave us with -3z equals 18 minus 6 is 12. And divide by 3 both sides. And z equals to 4. That's one way. And the other way is the same thing, basically. So we have 3 -z. We can divide both sides by 3. Remember that the reason why we divide here first and not the other questions that we did is because in here, 3 is being multiplied by everything, right? With negative z and plus 2, okay? So this is not going to change the answer. But on the other side, well, you could also divide both sides first before sending the plus 5 or plus 3. That would be a longer and a harder version, so we don't do that. But here, you can do it. Actually, in this case, this version is probably a lot easier. So we can simplify 3, and 18 divided by 3 is 6. It's going to leave us with negative z plus 2 equals 6. Send the 2 here. On the other side, negative z equals 4. Divide both sides by negative 1, which means that z equals negative 4. Negative 4. Oh, sorry, I forgot to. Okay, so in here we divided both sides by negative 3. I forgot to put negative. Both of the answers are negative 4. So basically, it's up to you to decide which one you want to use. Okay, let's do this one. It's asking what is x. We want to isolate to x. So I can start by dividing both sides with negative 5, right? To simplify. This would leave us with 7 minus negative x equals to negative 7. Because 35 divided by negative 5 is negative 7. Remember that negative times negative is a positive. We can just rewrite it as 7 plus x equals to negative 7. Send the 7 to the other side. It'll become a negative 7. Rid of this. X equals negative 14. Okay, last 2 questions. And don't forget to pause the video and do it yourself. We're getting into a little bit more complex questions right now. So, in this equation, we have x on the both sides. So we want to isolate the unknown. We can just combine the x's on one side, and then we can do other stuff to leave it alone, right? How about we distribute these in the parentheses, right? Because think about it. If I divide both sides with negative 3, it would just, we have x on both sides, so it wouldn't make much sense to do that. I think it would be a lot easier to just distribute. So, negative 3x, negative 12 equals 2. So we did that. 16, negative 2x. And now we have this. It seems a lot easier right now to leave the x alone, right? So how about I just send x to this side and 16 to this side, which would mean that we would have x's on the right and the numbers on the left. So let's do that. Negative 3x would become positive 3x. So 3x minus 2x would equal to 16 would become negative 16. Negative 12 minus 16. Now, so we're getting a little bit closer. Let's continue. Negative 12 minus 16 would give us negative 28. And 3x minus 2x is x. So we just found it. X equals to negative 28. Now we're doing the last question. Let's divide it like this. Again, I could use the distributive property to distribute these numbers to the parentheses. Negative 2z minus 8 plus 6 times 5 is 30 minus 6z equals 4. So let's just combine these on the left side to make it easier, and then we can isolate the unknown. Combine the like terms. Negative 2z and negative 6z would give me negative 8z. Negative 8 plus 30 would give me 22 equals to 4. I can send the positive 22 to the other side as a negative 22. So 8z. Negative 22 plus 4 is negative 18. I can divide both sides by negative 8 equals to 18/3. divided by 8, because a negative divided by negative is a positive. You can, if you want, you can further simplify this, because 18 and 8 can both be divided by 2, which would give you 9/4. And you cannot further simplify this. Let's now do a question that seems a little bit more complicated, a little bit more visual. If the perimeter of the rectangle shown in the figure is 28, what is A? So this question actually doesn't give us the equation, but it wants us to set up the equation. It's asking for the perimeter, right? Well, to find the perimeter of a rectangle, you add all of the sides. 2a minus 3 here, a plus 2 here. This side is also 2a minus 3, and this side is also a plus 2, because in a rectangle, the opposite sides equal to each other. 2a minus 3 plus. You could do plus. Yeah, let's do that. It really doesn't mean. You could also multiply by 2, or you could just do it this way. Minus 3 plus a plus 2 plus a plus 2. Because we're just adding and subtracting, you don't really need the parentheses. All of this equals to 28. It's asking for us to find a. Let's combine the like terms. We have constants, and then we have a terms with variable a. 2a, 2a plus 2a, a. 2 plus 2 is 4, 5 and 6. 6a. And then I have -3, -3 would be -6, plus 2 is -4, and plus 2 is -2. -2 equals to 28. Now let's do what we've been doing. Send the -2 to the other side as +2. 6a equals to 28 plus 2, which is 30. Divide both sides. Let's go a little bit down. Divide both sides with 6. And now we have a equals to 5. Okay, here's another question. A basketball team's score difference is determined by subtracting the number of points conceded from the number of points scored. If a team scores 4x plus 6 points in a season and concedes x minus 15 points and has a score difference of 80, it's x. So the points we're subtracting, basically the points they scored minus points they lost, and we're making our own equation. So if we do 4x plus 6, the number of points scored, minus x minus 15 equals to 80. You would also need to put a parentheses, right? Because remember, this negative, this minus sign, belongs to both x and -15. Because if you don't put the parentheses, you might just think that's -x, so you might just do 4x minus x, 3x, plus 6 minus 15 is -9, equals 80. That's not correct. You wouldn't get the correct answer. So, don't forget to put parentheses here, because we're subtracting all of this from this. So, now let's do it the correct way. You can just distribute the x into the parentheses. You would end up with 4x plus 6 minus x plus 15, because a negative times a negative is a positive, equals to 80. Now, combine the similar terms. 4x minus x is 3x. 6 plus 15 is 21, equals to 80. And now we're going to isolate the x. Send 21 to the other side. It will be a -21. So 3x equals to 80 minus 21 is 59. And now we can divide both sides by 3. The answer is x equals to 59/3. That's it. Okay, we are done for today. Thank you for watching and don't forget to subscribe.